I woke up 3 months later, didn't know where I was, didn't know what happened. Um, Luckily, like I don't have an actual pinpointed moment of when I woke up because I'd been put into an induced coma. So um, I was in the coma because of all the medicines I was on. So after about 7 or 8 weeks, they decided that they had to start bringing me round from the coma, because basically if you're in a coma for a very long time, you get something called critical care neuropathy, where basically all your nerves in your body just start to diminish and disappear, um, and so you lose all your feeling and your movement, um, in where the nerves have disappeared. So all my nerves disappeared from my feet upwards and from my hands upwards. So um, that's why I had to be brought out of the coma after about 8 weeks. So it took about 4 weeks for me to actually come out of it by taking me off the drugs and taking me um, off all the medicines I was on. So let me think. Yeah, so I haven't got a pinpointed moment as to when I woke up, but I remember like all small little flashes of things. Like I used to have really bad hallucinations all the time because of all the drugs I was on. I was actually addicted to some of these drugs because I'd been on them for so long. But yeah, I used to have hallucinations all the time. I often used to see um, people just standing and staring at me in the room when they weren't there. Um, I've got a few memories, like I couldn't speak when I woke up because when they'd done the skin grafts, obviously I'd burnt all the way up to my forehead, so they'd done the skin grafts, and because they'd done all the way up to my lips, the skin actually started to tighten when it was healing, so my mouth ended up staying open like that. And it meant that I had to learn to use my mouth again and learn to speak again. So I had to have all my speech therapy. But I remember one of the first things I said when I woke up was that I wanted to see my baby Emma, because I thought I had a child. I don't know why. But obviously I couldn't say that. So my mum and dad would say, "Who do you want to see?" And I tried to mouth it, but my lips wouldn't close. So I was going, like, I was trying to say Emma but without M's. So they had to get an alphabet board out, and they'd point at the letters, and then I had to nod when they were at the right letters, and they spelt out the word Emma and things like that. So when I could speak, finally, I said, they were like, "Who do you want to see?" And I said, "Emma." And they were like, "Well, who's Emma?" And I was like, "My baby." And they were like, "Oh, well, you don't have a baby, Catrin." And I was like, "Yes, I do. She's at home in Rossett." And yeah, so I had a lot of times when I was very confused and things. Um, Other memories are things like I was on I had a tracheostomy in my throat, which is like ventilation basically, because I couldn't breathe for myself and things to begin with. So um, they had to, it makes a hole in your throat there, so they had to plug the hole in order for me to speak to begin with. So I had a plug in my throat to help me speak, and then that gradually closed up over time. Um, and then I had a nose tube in, so I was being fed through my nose tube. But I started to eat things in intensive care like ice cream and cottage pie, things that were a bit soft and things. So yeah, that I just have like a few memories like that from intensive care, um, but they're very very few. I remember I had one bath. Well, I remember I had baths whilst I was in intensive care, and it's quite a risky thing to do. Like it wasn't something that they normally did in intensive care because it's so dangerous to put someone in a bath whilst they're ventilated and have got all these different medicines in them and things. So it used to take about 12 people to bath me, because they'd have to have anaesthetists, ventilation staff, people to actually wash me, people to hold my head up and things like that. And that was whilst I was in my coma. So then when I came out of my coma, I only remember one bath in intensive care, and it was horrendous because I remember the thing that I was more bothered about was the fact that I had 12 people standing around a bath looking at me naked. I was bothered about that. Um, but yeah, it was something that they hadn't really done in intensive care before, and it was really risky. But if they hadn't done it, I wouldn't have stayed clean, and I probably wouldn't be here today. My mum says she asked me when I first woke up where I'd last, or my mum and the psychologist were asking me if I'd been on holiday, and I said yeah, and they said, "Was it somewhere cold?" And I said no, I went somewhere hot. And so I couldn't remember to begin with that I'd even been skiing or been on my season. Sorry. So after a while I did remember, but it took a bit of sort of my mum and dad saying stuff to me and things. And I don't think I fully realised what had happened to me until about like a few weeks into the burns unit. Obviously I had people tell me all the time like what had happened to me, but I hadn't actually seen my body and things. I hadn't seen like what, like my skin. So I don't think it really what's the word, connected in my head like what had happened. My memory was quite hazy, and actually I used to have dreams to begin with, like about what had happened, but it was sort of not what had happened. So I originally, when I woke up, and everyone was telling me that I'd been in an accident and I'd been burnt. In my head, I think I must have dreamt it, but I believed it, that I had set on fire and then I went running down the back of the coach and jumped out. When that didn't happen at all. And I also had a dream that like those people that were carrying me away weren't the people that actually did, and things like that. So I was very confused as to what had happened, like properly. But yeah, I'd say like a couple of weeks into my stay at the burns unit after intensive care, it sort of set in what had really happened. And like the fact that I couldn't do anything for myself and I couldn't move, like I couldn't even like bend my arms or use my hands. I think then it sort of took its toll as to what had happened, and then I think I started going a bit downhill, a bit. Started actually getting upset about it and things.
And understandably so. Like, so what kind of, so you had some dark days, so to speak. Were you in pain constantly then as well? Like?
Yeah, obviously I had medicine to try and manage the pain, but I don't know. It's not really. I don't think it's really the kind of pain that there wasn't enough medicine in the world to stop the pain completely. Especially, obviously, the burns stung still after they'd been done, after all the skin grafts had been done, and I was having my dressings changed almost every day. And having my dressings changed was just excruciating enough. Having to peel things off open wounds, like most people would know, but everywhere on my body, was horrible. So yeah, I had like that kind of pain, but also, as I said about before, the critical care neuropathy. When that happens, when you get back to a point of being like well, which I suppose I was, in the burns unit, your nerves start to grow back. So when your nerves start to grow back, basically they start from the inside out. So all my nerves started to work down my arms. So it started this way from the top of here. So it's extremely painful when nerves grow back. So if anyone would touch the top of my arm, it would be excruciating and horrible. But slowly, like it works its way down, and like then it would be fine for people to touch the tops of my arms. And the same with my legs. It started at the tops of my legs and it works its way down. So the extremities, like your hands and your feet, is where the nerves grow last. So I've had a lot of problems with my hands and my feet because they've been so painful. And the only way to make the nerves regrow and to make, basically when your nerves regrow, you have to relearn textures and temperatures, and you have to relearn what things feel like and things like that. So I've had to, basically to get better, and in order for my feet and my hands to get better, I've had to go through the pain of touching all different textures and being in different temperatures of water and things like that. So that was very difficult, and that was probably my most painful thing. My hands definitely were my most painful thing. Like the nurses and the physios trying to get me to hold on to things and touch all these different textures and feelings. It's like reverting back to being a child, because children, when they're younger, learn what things feel like by touching everything, and that's what it's like. That was what it's like for me. I had to learn to touch everything, and I had to do everything like a child did. I had to learn to speak, I had to learn to touch things, I had to learn to walk, I had to learn to go to the toilet again on my own, because I had a stoma in my stomach because my bowel got redirected. So yeah, I'd say I did have a lot of dark days, because of the pain, but also because of, you know, the thought of what had happened and the fact that I'd had 4 months of probably the best 4 months of my life, having fun and meeting all these new people and being independent for the first time in the on my ski season, and then that got completely ripped away from me to me being completely dependent on everyone around me, and not being able to do what I had planned to do in the future, which was, you know, possibly go to university, possibly continue travelling. Yeah, and I just basically, oh, excuse me, and I just basically felt like I'd had sort of a year of my life taken away from me.